We've learned a lot about value, and we've learned a lot about value streams from Chris in an earlier video. And that's about understanding from the customer's perspective how that value travels through that business, end to end, through all the processes and all the systems that we have. And that's the second principle of Lean, understanding how that value flows. So Deming talked about process quite a lot. And he said, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, that means you really don't understand what you're doing. Now that sounds a little bit harsh, but everything we do is a process, and particularly everything we do in business is a process. So what is a process? The dictionary definition is it's a series of steps conducing to an end that achieve a certain outcome. But there's some specifics around processes that we need to understand in Lean. We need to understand how that process works. What are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the dependencies in terms of getting that product or that service from start to finish? What are the steps involved? So understanding process is really important in Lean. Often we're told that there are three versions of every process. The one that we think it is, that may be drawn on a map in a drawer somewhere. The one that it actually is, the thing that the operators and the people do every single day, probably a little bit different to what was expected. And also what we'd like it to be, what we think the optimum would be. Once we've looked at all those things that we can improve, what would the optimum process be? So there's potentially 3 different versions of everything we do. And what we're trying to do at this stage is just understand the current state. What is happening today? Honestly, warts and all, not a problem, as long as we all agree what that process is. And how we do that is by process mapping. So there are some elements of a process map that we need to have in place, and they may seem straightforward, but can be tricky in complex processes. So every process that we have needs to have a start. And again, that sounds really obvious, but it might be an email that triggers an action. It might be a timed event that triggers an action. It might be a complaint from a customer that triggers an action. What is it that triggers that process, that makes us spring into action? So we define that really, really clearly at the start. What's the trigger? What's the start of that process? So we have a start. And quite naturally, we also have an end. How do we know when that process is finished? What tells us it's concluded, it's complete, it's finished? And if we can define that start and end right at the very start, we have our scope of the process that we're looking at. Then the other thing that processes need, naturally, is the series of steps. And they might be fairly simple. Step 1, from the trigger, what's the first thing that happens? Could be anything. There could be a second step. So we have a series of actions, but also we have decision points. They're often represented by a little diamond shape. So if I was making a cup of tea, as we do you want sugar? Do you not want sugar? Yes or no? It's a decision point. It's a gateway. So there are options, potentially, in a process as we draw it. So that's a yes and that's a no. And then maybe that process comes back together once we've made that decision, and it carries on until the end. So we've got our steps, we've got our decision points, and they may be a lot more complex than that. We've got our start and our end. We've got the start of a process as we're trying to understand it. Now when we start to look at a process, we've talked about the start and the end and the steps in between and decision points. But we like to use a tool in Lean called SIPOC. And it's an acronym. There's lots of them in Lean. And it starts with understanding the process. So I think the best way for me to explain how SIPOC works is to work through one on the board here. And we always start with the P, process. And we start going down the middle here. And we're looking to capture a process at quite high level. We're not going into the absolute detail of every process step. We're trying to get about 5 to 8 steps to understand this process in a little bit more detail. So for this example, let's think about a customer complaint, maybe. Okay, so if we had a customer complaint coming into our organisation, what are the steps, the big steps that we'd need to take in order to resolve that for our customer? So first of all, we may have, we need the trigger to this process, which is the complaint received. Let's start there. And at the moment, we're just looking at the process steps. So then the customers come to us with an issue. We may then think, do you know what? We might need to put some containment action in place, something to stop further issues getting to the customer while we work out what's going on. So we could maybe put some containment actions in here, which would be sensible. And that could be working on, if some product's gone wrong, reworking it to get it right while we work out what the root cause of the problem might be. So we might put some containment actions in place. But then, of course, we've got to understand what's really happening, don't we? So then we'll do our root cause analysis, hopefully. Root cause analysis. And that's where we'd get teams involved to understand what's really gone on. Is it all products? Is it not all products? Is it certain products made on certain days? Is it all batches? Is it certain batches? What are the specifics around that? And what do we think has caused the problem? So we'll do some root cause analysis. And then once we've got to the bottom of the problem, we're most likely to put some corrective actions in place to prevent this thing happening again. So I'll call these corrective actions, and that'll be, it could be we've updated a process, or there might have been a machine that was broken, or somebody not following the right instructions. It could have been anything, but those corrective actions are now in place. And then we'd probably need to verify that those corrective actions are complete, and our customer, we probably want to let them know that it's all fixed. So we'd probably need to verify and close, let's say. Okay, so it's quite a complicated process, but we kind of broken it down into 5 steps here, and that's a really good place to start. And what we do then is we move on to the next layer. We're looking at this process again, but this time we're looking at what are the outputs. So the O in SIPOC is for the outputs. And it's good to look at each of these steps and think, okay, what's the output of each of those things? Okay, so the output of the complaint that's been received, there would probably be a record, wouldn't there? Record on a system, record of the complaint. There'd be some customer data, there'd be some customer information coming out of that. Could it be that they've complained several times, or is this new? Is it an old customer, new customer? There'd be some data about that customer there. There'd be some sort of report that goes to the operation to say, do you know what, there's an issue here, this is what it looks like. So there'd be a report to the operation, depending on what that operation is, that manufacturing manager or whoever it might be. Okay, so there's some good outputs, there may be a few more, but it's a good place to start. Then we look at, okay, so the containment actions step, what are the outputs from that? So there would be potentially an action plan maybe coming out of there, perhaps some sort of activity that needs to occur. So we might have some changes to products that we need to make to stop that issue getting to the customer, or keeping on going to the customer while we get to the root cause, the bottom of the problem. So we might have some reworked product that we need to deal with. we might have to call some product back, we might have to do other things to prevent that issue, getting to the customer while we understand what the problem is. Okay, so there's probably more actions on there, but we'll leave that for now. Then if we go to the root cause analysis step, we'd probably, the output of that, again, the output of that would be some root causes of the issue. We might do some trials to make sure that we've definitely contained the problem, we've resolved the problem. So we might have tested our assumptions about what we've fixed to make sure it's definitely fixed and that we've definitely found the root cause. And we might have some learnings or some other information out of that process that we need to share with the rest of the teams to make sure that everybody understands what that corrective action needs to be. Onto the corrective action then. The outputs of that could be anything. So it could be that we've changed a process, it could be that we need to do some training, it could be that we need to revise our standard operating procedures, it could be any number of things. So let's just put on there, it could be a process update, it could be training, it could be standard operating procedures need updating, it could be any number of things, for an example. And then once we understand what those corrective actions have been and we've implemented those, we get to verify and close, where we'll let our customer know, we'll communicate with our customer and potentially with our teams as well to let them know that issue is now resolved. We'll have verified, we'll have closed the original complaint. So we'll close that complaint. And we may also have some lessons learned to review, maybe with our teams and maybe involving customer services. So we've finished our O column, our outputs column. Let's start to look at our inputs for each of these process steps individually. So the input to this process step, obviously there's a customer complaint there, a customer's issue that they wish to report to us. There's probably some information about the product, there's some information about the problem. So we can just put some information going into there. It's probably all at that stage. There's probably the system that they're using as well to report that problem. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it a system that they're using? It could be all sorts of things. And then the inputs to this process step here. So we're looking at containment actions. So the outputs of this step quite often also feed into this next step here. So we're going to be taking the record of the complaint here. The record of the complaint, there's probably some customer info coming in. There's an input to that step. There's probably also some technical information, some data about the products involved. So there's probably some product data and other information. I won't write it all, but you get the general idea. All that is inputs to those containment actions. Out of that, we've got an action plan and potentially some reworked product that we've needed to deal with, some containment action that are needed to happen. So coming into this step here, coming into the root cause analysis, that's probably going to be a bit more information. We're going to need to know a lot more product data. We're going to need manufacturing information. We're going to need technical specifications. There's potentially all sorts of inputs that root cause analysis step will need. So we'll just call it product, manufacturing and technical data going into that root cause analysis step. And then out of that root cause analysis, we've got to the bottom of the problem, thank goodness. We've tested it, we've fixed it, we know what the problem is. We've got lots of information about that issue now. We can start to put those corrective actions in place. And that might need Obviously we're going to do some training, we're going to need some training resources, we're going to need some documentation, we're going to need some information to share with our colleagues and with the management team to put those corrective actions in place. So we're going to need that root cause to go in here, aren't we? We're going to need all that information about the testing, but we're also going to need training resources. Potentially training resource, we're going to potentially need the management involvement, we might need the quality teams, we might need other things to be updated, quality standards maybe. Could be all sorts of things that go into that corrective action. And right at the very end here, the inputs to this step, the verify and close, is obviously the updated processes, the training's been completed, the root cause was resolved, the standard operating procedures are now updated, everything's in place, so those processes are updated in there, training has been completed. We can then confirm to the customer that that's all resolved. So that's a really good start, a really high level start, but a good start. And the good thing about SIPOC is you'd always do this within a team, within a group. You'd get all the people involved in this process to share in this activity. It's never something you generally do by yourself, because the more input you get to it, the better. So this is a team activity. And getting to this stage is often, really powerful in terms of getting everybody on the same page. Then we look at the suppliers, which is the S in SIPOC. So in this strange one, the supplier to this process step, quite uniquely I imagine, is actually the customer, isn't it? This is the individual who feeds into this process. We've also got potentially the sales team involved here as well as a supplier to this process. The sales manager, the regional sales manager might be involved. It could be the production team, obviously the operations team may well be involved here as well. Coming into root cause analysis, you've got the technical people, the technical team who would be potentially inputting into that process step. You might have the quality team, you might have a quality part of your organisation who are an input to this corrective action step. You might have a training resource, a HR or training as an input to this step. So here we're just listing who are the suppliers to this process. And what that actually gives us is the start of a really good scope. We start to understand how many people, how many teams, how many different interrelated processes and systems are impacted by anything we change here. It gets it all on one page and it gives a really high level view, a really good starting point of getting to the bottom of the problem. So just to finish off then at the end, C in SIPOC stands for customer. So that's the customer of each of these steps. So we've got a few. We've got the operations team here. We can just start to list a few. We've got the management team probably, because they'll want to know what's happened. A customer is actually the customer again here right at the very end, because they're going to be on the receiving end of any containment actions we've put in place, and the root cause of the issue to confirm to them that everything's fixed and it's all good. There'll be obviously the operational team. You get the idea. So there may be a few different customers, but that gives you a really good overview. So you can see SIPOC is quite a powerful tool. It's a really good way of looking at really simple processes, or processes at a reasonably high level, but getting everybody in the room to understand what those steps are, what the inputs are and what the outputs are, gives you a really good firm grounding to then start your improvement activities going forward.